A beautiful but evil-minded girl named Chu Jiatang goes and asks the guy what he is doing near the car. Other people are walking behind her and discussing where they should go after school today. Chu Jiatang orders this intimidated guy to quickly open the car door for her. She reproaches him for sitting on her family's neck for a whole year and not working, so she gives advice to look for a normal job for the guy. The girl throws her briefcase at him and points with her finger. Chu Jiatang demands that the guy park further away from the school so that her classmates will not see him in any case. The girl got into the car irritably and was outraged by the kind of husband her sister had chosen for herself. The driver of the car was also extremely dissatisfied with the fact that he was being reproached, so he squeezed the steering wheel of the car with great force. The sun was already setting. The sky was illuminated by a gorgeous sunset. The birds were flying high. The heroes drove up to the chic mansion, the home of the Chu family. Inside, there was already a conversation between a man sitting freely on the sofa and a woman who fit on a chair next to him. Ming Hao, the man's name, boasted that if he had not gone to study abroad, he might not have met Qin Yin. The woman next to him was laughing, covering her face with her hand, and recognized the talent of her interlocutor, because the aunt was not mistaken in him one iota. Ming Hao decides to ask where his beloved Qin Yin is disappearing, as he wants to see her. The aunt or mother-in-law of Qing Li under the name Hanging replies that the girl has not returned yet, so most likely she is sitting in her company. A childhood friend, now sitting in the living room, began to wonder about the girl's fiancé. As Ming Hao heard, her fiancé can't speak, so he stays at home all the time. The guy is very curious about who could be so interested in Qin Yin that she even agreed to bring him to her mother's house. Auntie guessed that the interlocutor was talking about Qing Li, who would be bringing them to Jiatang any minute now. Since the house is quiet and smooth, the day may begin when a woman will give a blessing to their marriage. The newly arrived heroes went home and scattered to their rooms. Auntie didn't like it, so she got up and started shouting after the people leaving, in particular Qing Li. The woman demanded that he go down immediately, as they had guests, and his back will not break if he leaves his room to the guests. Since the guy did not react in any way to the information that the aunt shouted, Jiatang called Qing Li again, only this time with a reproach, so that he would clear his ears, or even deaf in addition. The girl went to the door of her sister's fiancé's room and looked through a small crack. As soon as she looked, she immediately recoiled, shouting uncultured words and rubbing her eyes from what she saw. Qing Li was sitting not fully dressed and meditating, surrounded by a bright blue light that looked like a flame. After a few seconds, the guy opens his eyes. Exactly 10 years have passed since he said his last word. And now Li has managed to form some kind of sphere. I have allowed him to speak again. The guy corrects his jaw, as he has not spoken for a long time and these feelings are long forgotten. The calm and silence of the room is disturbed by the sound of a voice ordering you to go downstairs. The guy leaves the room, and beautiful white flowers have grown in place of a dry tree. Qing Li descends the spiral staircase, where his aunt and the same guest, his fiancé's childhood friend, are waiting for him at the bottom. The woman is outraged that the guy apparently began to suffer from deafness from today. Li just walked down the stairs in silence. The guest evaluates the guy who left the room with a confident and mocking look, to which he simply and confidently stands. From the very first sentence, the man tries to hurt Qing Li, gives him a handshake in honor of the acquaintance, and begins to express all sorts of nasty things. Ming Hao decides to start his reproaches with the fact that the guy lives in the house as a resident, and besides, he is mute. He assumes that Li proposed to the girl only for the sake of the untold riches of the Chu family, since he himself is not even a match for Qin Yin. And in the end, Ming Hao offers him $10,000 so that the groom disappears from this house forever. But suddenly the guy starts screaming loudly in pain, as his hand is being squeezed very hard. The groom Qin Yin introduced himself by his name, which surprised everyone present. With their mouths agape, they stared at the guy in a frenzy, and then the aunt asked again if he was talking. Ming Hao got angry, claiming that this guy was a fraud, hung all the noodles on his ears, and in general he could always talk. They also asked him about shame, but judging by the look of Li and the way he rolled his eyes, he didn't care what they thought about it. The aunt also started screaming, because she was very angry. The woman demanded that her daughter's fiancé immediately stop this outrage. Only Jiatang stands and watches in silence for now. Suddenly the phone rang. The girl picked up the phone and its extension was even higher, although much higher. It turns out that the police arrested Qin Yin. When the groom heard this, he immediately ran up to the girl and grabbed her hand with the phone, clarifying what had happened to his bride. Something happened with the company's affairs, so the police detained her. The guy lets go of the girl's hand and walks away. Everyone immediately throws themselves at him verbally. Allegedly, he runs like a rat from the ship at the first difficulties. Qing Li does not pay attention to them all and goes his own way. Ming Hao also decides to join the conversation, being interested in the affairs of her former best friend. It turns out that the firm has some serious problems. The police have surrounded the office and are demanding the immediate arrest of Qin Yin. The guy decides to reassure the woman that his family is not the last in this city. They have extensive connections. Just need to pull a couple of strings. When he was comforting Qin Ying's relatives, he himself became nervous for a long time and sweat started running down his face. He decides to scout the situation first, and the pale ant thanks Ming Hao for always knowing what to do in a difficult moment. Meanwhile, in the company constellation of the Eagle, the enraged girl points her finger at the staff and threatens them all to be behind bars today, as well as to compensate for moral damage. This girl's face was strewn with large pimples. The beautiful and tall Chu Qin Yin stands and looks sternly at the girl. The girl's mother appears on the spot, outraged by the multi-million-dollar damage, because it's just a robbery. Ming Hao also appears, addressing a respected young lady. He says that many people prefer their cosmetics brand and there has never been a similar case anywhere else, except for her. At the end, the guy adds that, fortunately, the police chief is an old friend of his. After hearing about the police chief, the girl crossed her arms and decides to repeat for the newcomers that her name is Liu Wang, and the mayor of this city is Liu Zheng, her close relative. The arrivals were very surprised to hear the word mayor. Ming immediately decides to retreat, because this radically changes the case. And he has nothing to do with this company at all. And besides, Ms. Liu is definitely the injured party, so the company is indebted to the respected consumer. Now Ming Hao is like a rat escaping from the ship at the first difficulties. He understands that his connections will not help here. This is a stronger opponent. Qing Li immediately appears, offering to remove all the pimples from Liu's face in 10 minutes. And then the girl will close this case. Qin Yin looks at her fiancé in surprise, who can now speak. Ming Hao was dissatisfied with the fact that this Prijavala is still spinning here, further shaming the family. The girl also asks what her boyfriend intends to do, because she is already here with problems up to her neck. And here he is with his tricks. Qing Li turns to her and asks her not to be afraid, because he is no longer who he was before. Now it is his time to fulfill his marital duty. The evil Ming glared at the groom Qin Yin and continued to shout that he was still the same trash. Even if he learned to speak, it doesn't change anything. Therefore, there is no need to pretend to be cool in front of Qin Yin. Chuckles went through the group of people. In Qing Li, everyone recognized the guy who got married and sat on his wife's neck, so he himself is mute. A pet on the neck of a mother-in-law, and also has the audacity to treat someone. It seemed to everyone that this was some kind of joke, and wherever the Chu family looked, people would be unhappy, but at the same time they would laugh at what was happening. But Qing Li approached the injured girl and said that he knew how to restore her beauty. He did not want to trust the guy at first, to which Li said that if Marifat did not visit, then he was ready to take all the risks, while she remains the winner in any scenario. Liu decides to agree on the condition that if the blisters do not disappear, then she will take it out on Li well. Qin Yin tries to dissuade her boyfriend, as with his words he can drive her business to the grave. Li only approaches the girl and says that the pimples on the girl's face are just blisters from burns, so the guy asks for help in preparing one medicine. Qin Yin clarifies whether it will help, and after receiving a positive response, she went in search of everything she needed. Ming Hao points his finger at Li and shouts that he will see what happens, so God forbid he will drag Qin Yin into trouble. The groom only looked indifferently at the loud friend. After a while, the girl brings a paper bag with ingredients, handing them to her boyfriend. Qin Yin asks to promise that in any case, her family should not suffer. With this guy's idea, the family will not be able to help him, and this is clear as day. But the new Li is no longer the silent one, not the mute survivor who was warmed by the Chu family. During reflections and internal conversations, the guy was preparing medicine. After cooking, Li brings a plate of cream to the girl and asks her to rub some amount into her face. The smell from the plate was unbearable. Liu looks doubtfully at this miracle of nature, and other girls are whispering from behind, saying that this is an abomination. The girl plugs her nose and, still not trusting the guy, gently applies a small amount of cream to her face. Qing Li smiles and, assuring that the company does not knit brooms, pours a huge amount of hot cream on the face of the injured customer. The girl runs screaming to the toilet, and the surrounding people start laughing, saying that he dug a hole for himself. Qin Yin looks at what is happening and still tries to think of something to save the situation. Suddenly, a joyful cry rang out from the women's toilet. The customer's face was perfectly clean without a single blister. When she came out of the toilet, everyone was shocked by the perfect result. The surrounding people did not believe that this heel could do such a thing. But you cannot deceive the eyes. Qin Yin runs up to her husband and asks how he did it. It turns out that the guy graduated from a pharmacodynamics course a long time ago. The cured girl runs up to Li and asks about the possibility of treating other people's sores. Qing Li says that he cannot give an exact answer right away, because first you need to examine the patient. Liu enthusiastically started talking about her uncle, who was seriously ill, so if the guy puts him on his feet, they will generously thank him. The guy, without hesitation, quickly agreed to this offer. Qin Yin was shocked by her partner's brash and abrupt behavior. She asked not to go there, because he is not a doctor, and other diseases are more difficult to remove than some pimples. But Li just grins and asks not to worry, because he himself knows perfectly well when to stop. The girl did not understand who her young beau thought he was. If he's going to get the dead out of the next world without 5 minutes, then the Chu family won't help him. The girl got angry and called her fiancé. But he only closed his eyes, exhaled, and said that he himself was able to decide what to do. The guy assured her that he would not cause any trouble to her family. Meanwhile, in the city hospital, it was already dark. The mayor of Yangcheng, Liu Zheng, in despair, asks the doctor if there are any other ways to save. A serious doctor says that the patient's condition is deteriorating faster than they predicted earlier, so the risk of complications during surgery is very high. The girl shouts to the mayor, asking what condition the uncle is in. Behind her comes a frowning Qing Li. It turns out that her uncle's condition has deteriorated sharply this morning, and now doctors are resuscitating in the ward. The girl looks at the man in shock, and then pushes Li forward, saying that today she met a doctor, an expert in Oriental medicine, who is able to cure her uncle. The man looked doubtfully at the boy, once again asking who he was, but received the same answer. The mayor didn't like that the guy looked too young, so besides he didn't have a medical license. The man started shouting at the girl, who, apparently the mayor, decided to joke. He won't let some charlatans of this kind even get close to the ward. Liu anxiously began to apologize to Dr. King, saying that he would have to leave. Suddenly, a nurse in a pink robe runs out of the ward and shouts that they are losing a patient, so urgent help is needed. Liu's family turns sharply at the cry and everyone runs into the ward, where a man is lying under various complex devices. The man shouts to the doctor with a request to do something, but he says that they are powerless in this case and lowers his head. Here the pink-haired girl enters the conversation again, saying that there is one chance to save her uncle in such a difficult situation. The man shouts again, asking not to talk nonsense, because if this chief doctor of the best hospital does not know how to help, then how can you believe some kid without a diploma? Qing Li comes closer to the patient and says that he can still be saved. But there is no time to think. The mayor demands that Tom get away. The girl looks at the speakers in fright. But Qing Li confidently looks at the man and offers him to make a bet with him. But this angers the man, who is exhausted from despair even more. The condition of the bet was that if Qing Li saved the old man, the mayor would apologize to him. If not, he would put him in jail for fraud. The mayor in a rage shouts at the impudent guy, and the girl asks him to leave since it really is time for him. King stands in silence for a few seconds, and then turns around and leaves. Finally, he only said that he could help the patient, so let them blame themselves in the future. When Li came out of the ward, Qin Yin was waiting for him outside. The girl was unhappy. She asked if the guy had calmed down and if they could go home now, while he hadn't done anything yet. Strange loud noises began to come from the ward, and whether he paid attention to them, turning around. It turns out that the mayor's father began to convulse, and the terrified Liu Zheng asked the doctor what was happening and why it happened, because everything was relatively normal just now. The doctor ordered to bring a pacemaker as soon as possible, and the nurse ran after him. The pulse was already at 0. The doctor lowered his hands, saying that they were powerless here, and the family would have to put up with it. The Lees were saddened and lowered their heads. The mayor ran to the foot of the bed and fell on his knees, asking his father's forgiveness and saying that he never deserved the elder's love. The man was crying when suddenly Qing Li bursts into the ward and shouts to everyone to get out of the way, because the patient can still be saved. Everyone turns to the guy in shock, but they are still inactive. But Qing Li did not. He quickly ran up to the patient and took off the blanket from him. A blue glow formed around the guy, which the mayor noticed, from which he could not believe what was happening. 10 years ago, a wandering monk initiated him into the secrets of ancient medicine, but in exchange demanded a vow. Qing Li has been silent for exactly 10 years, has not uttered a single word, and today the vow has fallen, so he can heal. Fate itself had brought him here, to this patient. He endured all hardships for this. With the help of needles, he tried to save the mayor's father, and then the man coughed sharply, waking up. The Li family was hailed by a native person, each in their own way, and Qing Li grabbed the handrail of the bed, trying to catch his breath, because if it had been a little more, it would not have been possible to save him. The doctor looks at the savior with surprised eyes and does not understand how this is even possible. Relatives joyfully run up to the patient. They see that he is already recovering. The girl says that her uncle scared them all to death, and it's good that he woke up. An elderly man asks not to be angry with himself and strokes his niece. Qing Li smiles at the rescue of his first serious patient and goes to the exit. Suddenly someone falls from behind. Li turns around and sees the mayor on his knees. He apologizes to Mr. King for his cowardice and unworthy behavior. But the guy interrupts his speech and, grabbing his hand, says that he seems to have won their bet, and asks not to take the rest to heart. Qing Li imagined how his son could feel when his father got sick. But now the main thing is that he is healed and is on the mend. The mayor got up from his knees and his niece came up to them. The girl asked them to accept their apologies for today's misunderstanding, and also to tell his account number, since $500,000 will be transferred to him immediately. Qing Li smiles and says that he was happy to help them. He will definitely send the number tonight. The guy walks out the door and stands for a couple of seconds in thought. Someone says that the king healer is something. He turns at the sound. His sad girlfriend is standing nearby. She says that everyone is in great demand for King today, and she didn't even think that he likes to meddle in other people's affairs so much. The girl's hands were folded, and her gaze was directed downwards. She didn't seem impressed at all. Manhwa appeared from around the corner, who was angry because King was asking for trouble. The heroes are heading home, ahead of Qin Yin, and behind her Qin Li. Auntie immediately flies up to her daughter and asks about her well-being, because she herself almost went crazy from everything that is happening. The girl asks her mom not to worry, because everything has been over for a long time. They smile at each other and immediately the woman switches to her son-in-law, telling him to urgently pick up a broom and clean up. The guy sighs, realizing that everything has started all over again. Qin Yin says goodbye to his mother, citing severe fatigue, and goes to his room. After a while, Qing Li comes into the girl's room and informs her that he has finished with all household chores. The girl offers to do yoga, but the guy refuses. Qin Yin decides to bring up the topic of the morning misunderstanding, since her sister complained about him. Closing the door of the room, the guy said that he only brought her home from school, and then went to change to his room and forgot to lock the room with a key. But Jai Tang was smart enough to break in without knocking. Qin Yin believed her husband, as she knows her sister's character perfectly well. The guy proved today that you can stand behind him like behind a stone wall. He was really lucky all day today. The girl's words confused Li a little, but she decided to finish that tomorrow is a small family evening, so he goes with her. From what he heard, the guy rolled his eyes, sighed, but agreed. The tired girl fell on the bed and thanked her husband for today, and for saving her from prison. It was a clear sunny day. In a multi-story building, all the cream of society gathered for a dinner party. Someone greeted his nieces, someone an aunt. In the end, it seems like everyone came up on time. For the first time this year, they gathered the whole Big Chu family. Looking at one of the women, Qing Li thought that it would be necessary to praise her dress, because she is still able to weave intrigues. This woman's name was Chu Qin, Chu Ding's older sister. She decided to ask Qin Yin about the future offspring, and when their couple is going to get one. Both representatives of the fair sex were holding wine glasses and chatting pleasantly. Qin Yin decided to refer to a young age, so it's too early for them to think about it, because there is still time. GCI Tian gave advice on the fact that it is not necessary to postpone this issue for a long time. Youth is so fleeting, and it is not good to make my father nervous. Qin Yin only politely thanked the woman, and Qin Li was calmly eating chicken next to her. GCI Tian decided to turn the topic to her son-in-law, Cheng Wen, sitting next to her. He does not bother them about this, because his wife decides everything herself. They are not like some. The guy just asked not to embarrass him, because he was already blushing from such pleasant words. Others also began to note the superiority of GCI Tian's son-in-law. She only agreed with this and added that their Chang Wen had a good place in the government, not like some. With each phrase, the relatives tried to pick up Qin Yin, and then, as it were, apologized for the sharply and thoughtlessly thrown words. But they were hardly ashamed, because it was done quite deliberately. Cheng Wen was sipping wine, looking at his mother-in-law, and then he got up and brought some kind of gift in a red suitcase. He brings it to his uncle, asking him not to refuse. The man smiles and says that it was not worth it, but in fact he was unspeakably glad of such an action. When he opened the box, he was extremely surprised because there was a porcelain bowl of the Yuan dynasty in it. The guy asked not to thank him for this gift because he had heard about his uncle's passion for porcelain, so he allocated 30,000 to buy something worthwhile and memorable for his uncle. Mother-in-law and son-in-law stood proudly in front of everyone, grinning and triumphant. And my uncle was too amazed and praised this porcelain cup, holding it in a handkerchief. Yes, indeed, this Cheng Wen knows how to squander money. On the opposite corner of the table, King Li was sitting and looking at someone else's gift with displeasure. The guy's eyes lit up with blue fire. He saw perfectly well that this was a well-made copy, which was cleverly thrown into the tomb, so it's hard to even call this bowl a fake, just a misunderstanding. Cheng Wen turned to Li, asking him to take a closer look at the gift he gave his uncle. And then she started laughing abruptly, realizing in her head that he was supposedly disabled and was living in her mother-in-law's house, which was sitting on their precious sister's neck, so he could not know about such money. And then he casually says that he will be heading the department from day to day, so he offers to arrange for a cleaner there, because it's better than nothing. Cheng continues to laugh out loud until Qin Yin demands to stop this whole circus. King Li is also a member of their family, so it was not permissible to say such words out loud. But Cheng continues to talk about their lack of money and laughs. Suddenly, King Li abruptly gets up from the table and starts saying that he is empty-handed today. He is immediately interrupted by a surprised Cheng, because he thought that the guy was dumb, and Cheng's wife Vienna saying that in any case he is garbage, even if he learned to speak. She was overconfident and kept her hands folded on her chest. King Li didn't care what anyone said about him. He only said that the gift from the Cheng family was fake. Everyone immediately grinned and started shouting at Li that he was out of his mind. He hadn't earned a cent himself, and here he was trying to show something of himself. King Li is sure that it doesn't matter how much they spent on it, because it's a real fake. The guy was clearly confident in his words and was not afraid of condemnation. Cheng immediately went berserk, starting to run into Li. Allegedly, he has no right to talk about his gift like that, because he doesn't understand anything about it. King Li sighs, scratches his head with his right hand and calmly asserts that there will be proofs for all of them, since they do not believe. Uncle demanded to stop all these conversations. GQI Tian only added fuel to the fire, saying that King Li had already completely lost his temper. He had too much envy and anger towards Cheng Wen, so he began to openly slander. Qin Ying also demanded to stop such an outburst from her husband, because Cheng, after all, is the husband of her own sister. The guy stood his ground and burned through everyone present with an angry, firm look. So, my sister's husband gave me not antiques, but ordinary bullshit. The girl was sure that even if it was a fake, it was given with the best intentions. Besides, today is their family dinner. Then someone came into the room and asked to look at the supposedly fake artifact. It was Wu Fangmao and Mayor Liu Zhang himself who came. Seeing them, Cheng was unspeakably glad, because he could not even imagine that he, an ordinary clerk, would be honored by the mayor of the city himself. Cheng Wen asked permission to introduce the mayor to his guests, but the mayor walks completely past Wen and approaches, smiling at King Li. The mayor was very happy to see Li here, and besides, he still has no idea how to thank him for yesterday's rescue. Li smiles and says he doesn't need anything. From what he saw, Cheng falls into shock, so he begins to tell the mayor that this King Li is just a piece of garbage that is not worthy of Liu's attention. From such words, the mayor became enraged and looked at Wen, who immediately knelt down, asking for forgiveness for the rudely spoken words. Liu Zheng looked at Li worriedly and asked if there was any problem with this clerk. King Li refused, saying that it was only his wife's relatives, and they were just arguing whether it was an antique or a cheap fake. All eyes were on the gift. The mayor, without thinking twice, immediately said that this was not a bowl of the Yuan dynasty. Venerable Wu was asked to evaluate this thing as an expert. It's been many years since the old man retired, but before his specialization was just products of this era. The man picked up the gift and looked at it carefully. The colors were indeed very similar to the Yuan era. Cheng exhaled ahead of time, worried that he had invested a lot of money in this luxury item. King Li was dissatisfied with the old man's assessment. He sawed the man with a stern look and asked again that this was his final verdict. Li, indeed, questioned the expert's assessment, and the old man Lil laughed. Now he understood what Li liked so much about this guy. It turns out that this is undoubtedly a fake. On the products of this era, if you look closely, you can see the brand. All the patterns are applied manually, and although the technique is old, it is beautiful in its uniqueness. And this gift is just a fake, albeit a good one. Besides, she clearly managed to lie in the crypt for a long period of time. A death sign was often placed on such bowls, and after a moment, the man found him. Everyone immediately began to wipe their hands, and GCI Tian began to shout at her son-in-law, who dared to give such rubbish. He only refused, talking about his ignorance. Fang Mao praised Lai for being able to see the flaw even in such an exact copy, and also added that he had just wonderful eyesight, so he offered to come to his department as soon as there was time. Mer smiles and invites King Li to honor him and become his guest. To tell the truth, Liu Zheng did not even dream of meeting Li so easily, so he would like to chat along the way. King Li said goodbye to his family, promising to return as soon as everyone had eaten, and left with the mayor. GCI Tian immediately noticed that Li and the mayor were on short terms, surpassing her Cheng Wen. King Li's mother-in-law only said that they just didn't want to spread much about it, so as not to jinx it inadvertently. After leaving the door, King Li immediately wanted to know why the mayor wanted to talk to him. It turns out that after his departure, their family was overtaken by a new misfortune. During these 2 months, his wife, children, and he himself began to feel worse and worse every day. They went to the doctors. According to all the tests, they are completely healthy. King Li wanted to check the man's pulse, and it really turned out to be as the mayor said. He wanted to hear the verdict from the healer, but he just turned around and went in the opposite direction. King Li asked not to worry, as he just needed to think about something. The guy also asked Li to cancel all his plans, as he will come to them tonight right after the family dinner. The mayor was overjoyed, promising to wait for the guy. King Li was seeing off his wife's relatives. Uncle said that he added to his pride, because he's a nice guy. King Li asked everyone to go home after he sat his uncle in the back while he went on business. In the phone, the guy made a route to the house of Mr. Mayor Liu. Li turned right into a dark alley, and then he was met by Ming Hao's campaign with a hell of a gift of bandits. King Li ran into Ming Hao and his gang, who were clearly evil-minded. Ming said that Li had been pushing too hard and now he should be punished. King Li was completely calm and didn't even pay much attention to this campaign. Ming Hao ordered his guys to attack, and they immediately ran to Li, who in turn stood still and waited for the attack. Everyone who ran up and tried to hit the guy immediately received their slaps on the back of the head and fell to the ground. After a couple of moments, King Li put the ladder on the ground, looked at Ming Hao, and told him that he had brought few people with him. The enemy was extremely surprised by the location of such cases. He doesn't understand how this is possible, how some trash could change so quickly. King Li beckoned to the enemy with the index finger of his left hand, but he immediately turned around and ran away in the opposite direction, as far away from Li as possible. The guy sighed and began to look for the mayor's house again, since it should be somewhere in this area. The sun was already setting, beautifully illuminating the foliage of the trees with its extreme rays. King Li walked up to the mayor's huge house and rang the doorbell. He is met by the mayor himself, who looks rather unimportant. It turns out that the guy has been waiting here for a long time and asked to go inside as soon as possible. The atmosphere in the house was oppressive and even dangerous. Purple smoke was spreading everywhere. While the heroes were walking, a scream came from somewhere. Running into the children's room, the mayor asks what happened and immediately sees the answer to his question. Everyone is immediately horrified by such a sight. The mayor's wife fell to the floor, not understanding what kind of strange haze surrounds their baby. King Li stood on the threshold, looking at what was happening. The little boy was crying, and some strange purple demon was trying to grab him, and, by the way, he was not bad at it. Liu Zheng asked to take a quick look at what was happening, and Li demanded not to panic anyone, as he was going to release the child. Through the boy, the demon demanded not to interfere, and to go to hell from here. King Li pointed his hand at him, and he disappeared, and the boy fell on the bed. The parents and Li immediately ran up to the child, but the guy did not allow them to approach him, since it was not over yet. It comes out to a point in the middle of the forehead. With every breath the child tries to squeeze it out, to be cleansed of dishonesty. Meanwhile, the mayor's wife began to shout about who he brought into their house, threatening her with the death of her son. But he demanded that she close her mouth and not interfere. Things are really bad, because all of them have already been exposed to the spirit, so it's hardly worth speeding up. Blue bright energy gathered around him. The guy grabs a needle and brings it closer to the boy's forehead. The spirit did not expect such a turn and immediately leaves the body. King Li waves his hand and the demon disappears, as does the purple smoke from the house. The boy woke up and began to call his mother, and she immediately jumped up to him. King Li said that now we can be calm. Everything is left behind. However, it remains to find the source of this evil spirit. While the guy was thinking, the mayor was in extreme shock. Li asked if there had been any accidents at home recently, Or maybe strange gifts had been brought to their house. The guy looked under the bed, examining the house for an object that could become a source of evil spirit. There were no accidents in this family. Only recently 2 stone lions were delivered to them. They are standing at the entrance. King immediately rushed to the entrance to these statues. From one of them came the same purple smoke, and there was a small purple stone in his teeth. The guy took it out and said that this is exactly their cause of illness. The mayor was extremely surprised, but Li explained everything to him. Every day, leaving the house, they passed by the lions, and the pebble was directly connected with the evil spirit. So over time it began to infect the mayor, and now, under the influence of the evil spirit, he began to feel weak and irritated. And so on until the very end. King Li quickly crushed the stone with his fingers, destroying the evil spirit. The mayor's grateful wife went out on the street, not knowing how to thank her son's savior. But the guy asked not to invent, because the main thing is that the boy is fine. Liu Zheng approached Li and happily said that it was a great happiness to meet him one day. The mayor offered to let the guy down, and also eventually help with the opening of his own clinic. Li became surprised and thoughtful. He was intrigued by the discovery of his own name. Since he had already managed to save the entire mayor's family, the clinic bearing the name King Li would be a small token of gratitude from the Liu family. The guy did not refuse and thanked the man. Thanks to his own clinic, he will be able to help people and improve himself in his art. However, if the guy could find his parents, they would definitely be proud of him. It was already dark, the stars became visible, and the lights of the city lit up, showing all their beauty. The guy was driving thoughtlessly in the mayor's car when he suddenly demanded to stop abruptly. He saw his beautifully dressed wife on the street. King Li didn't understand where she was going so late when he suddenly saw a friend coming up to her, and then he realized that this was not just a friend. The girls entered the bar while King Li was looking at this spectacle. The driver of the car appreciated the taste of the passenger, and he began to justify that he had misunderstood everything. Upon arrival in the room, the girls immediately ordered stronger drinks and sat down at the bar. They didn't talk much about work and Qin Ying's difficulties. The second girl decided that they should forget themselves today and have a good time. After a while, Qin Ying admitted that her parents forced her to marry at least someone. She couldn't stand their constant babbling. Her friend just nudged her and smiled. Qin Ying's eyes began to blur. She could barely make out the words, but she agreed to drink another one. Soon the girl fell asleep on her friend's shoulder and she carried her to another room on the floor above. Meng Hao opened the door to them, who planned all this because he did not like that Qin Ying married Qin Li. The friend immediately left the room, leaving Qin Ying unconscious alone with Meng Hao. Immediately there was a knock on the door, and the guy went to open it. While he was thinking that it was his girlfriend who had returned for something, King Li himself appeared on the threshold with his eyes burning with rage. Meng Hao immediately began to justify himself, saying that he had misunderstood everything and Qin Ying had just overdone it, and he, like a good old friend, decided to take care of her. Li was enveloped in blue light and he hit the man opposite with all his might, which flew straight to the sofa against the wall. He cleared his throat, and King flew up to him, looking at him furiously. He offered to choose how he wanted to die. Meng Hao fell to his knees and began to beg for mercy. He promised that Li would not have time to blink an eye as he would disappear. Continuing to beg King to let him go, he looked at his wife, thought for a while, and decided to let him go. The guy rushed away, all the time thanks to Li, but immediately the second turns around and fatally strikes, saying that he has already let him go alive and unharmed twice, now let him blame himself. Qin Ying's friend was lying unconscious on the threshold, and Meng Hao also flew out of the room. The guy closed the door, looked at his wife and said that there were so many happy accidents today. He approached the girl, the blue flame enveloped him again, and the guy began to treat his wife with a needle. She began to slowly recover, so King Li asked about her well-being. But instead of gratitude for the rescue, the guy got a good slap in the face. Qin Ying did not understand everything as she should have, and everything that Meng Hao wanted to do, she attributed to her husband's actions. He once told his honest truth and left the room, since she herself is free to think as she wants. Qin Ying doesn't want to believe someone who has been deceiving her for so many years about not having a voice, so she throws a pillow at the closing door, calling her husband names. The girl begins to cry when she suddenly notices a camera filming nearby. Meanwhile, King Li's phone rang outside. On the other side of the phone, they asked to hear the guy. By this voice he recognized Mrs. Leah Wang. She asked about that wonderful cream that a young healer once gave her, and she also wondered if there was still any left. This wonderful cream literally transformed Leah Wang, as her skin has never been so soft and elastic. King Li asked how much the young lady would need, since when he returned home, he would come up with something for her. She said she should start with 200 jars and 2 million as payment. From these words, the guy literally fell into shock, but after he gathered his thoughts and replied that the consumables were cheap, so it was not worth giving so much money. Li Wang also said that her uncle mentioned that the guy was going to open a clinic, and this is a very expensive business. Thus, the girl wanted to sponsor Qing Li. The guy smiled and thanked the girl. The clock showed the first hour of the night. It was quite dark, only the moon illuminated the room. The girl was sitting on the sofa with a pillow in her arms. "It's so late, and my husband is still not here." She understood that she had offended Qing Li very much. He was probably beside himself with anger and was wandering alone somewhere. Then the guy comes into the room and the girl immediately swoops in with a question about how late her husband returned. Li just says he had some business. The girl looks away, unhappy that he didn't warn her about it. Qing Li doesn't answer her and keeps walking, and Qin Yin tries to start apologizing, but the guy interrupts her, making her work easier. He claims that his wife was just a little wrong today. The girl buries her nose in the pillow even harder and says that she will most likely be fired from the company. Qin Yin began to be indignant about the fact that her husband had recently started projects with Li Wang, not a couple of water apart. Well, now she was forced to resign, too. Her husband looked at her and asked what this had to do with her dismissal. The girl turned around and fiercely replied that she was right, because if she lost her job, then who would take care of their family, especially since she would not be able to find a new company right away. The guy takes a couple of steps and goes to the divan opposite his wife. Qing Li sits down and picks up a cup of tea. After thinking a little, he begins to say that the other day he helped a sick old man, and also healed the mayor of their city. The girl asked in surprise who he had healed, and Li, without answering, continued that he had helped his son further and therefore the mayor offered to accept a small gift from him as his own clinic. Qing Li will be able to earn a little money by healing the sick, and if the girl wants, then Li will be only glad to see her and her help in the affairs of the clinic. Qing Li replaced the mug with the drink, assuring that there was no reason to worry. Qin Yin looks at her husband in shock, not believing that he will open his clinic, thinking that this is said only to calm down. Qing Li went up the stairs and added, waving his hand, that the opening would take place very soon, and the girl had better think it over well, no one would rush her. Qin Yin mentally thanks her husband for everything and for his care, including, and also understands that she still has a lot to apologize to him for. The sun has long risen, a new day is in the yard. A loud voice is heard calling Qin Yin, as well as hurried doorbells. Qing Li in a sleep cap, not yet fully awake from his nap, walks to the door, realizing that he will not find anything good behind the door. The guy opens the door, expecting to see some girl. A beautiful tall girl stands on the threshold, lifting her glasses to see who is standing in front of her. Her name is Tang Jiading. She is a classmate of Qing Li and Qin Yin, also the latter's best friend. Jiading shouted at the guy for his manners and unfriendly hospitality, and then reproached how only Qin Yin could marry such a clumsy person, because it's like throwing a beautiful rose into a dung heap. According to Jiading, Qing Li before his wife is before Beijing cancer. The guy does not answer the girl, realizing that it was not for good that the difficult so Jiading brought, because in her student years she was unbearable. Qing Li recalled a case where hot pepper was poured into the girl's underwear, believing that it was very fun. But the truth is that it was fun only for girls. Jiading is trying to call her friend to take her shopping. The weather is clear outside. The car is driving with a disgruntled driver Qing Li and two girls in the back seat. Jiading hugs his girlfriend, and she asks where they are going today, although the answer is not even needed, of course, shopping. Well, the heroes are in place. Only a select few can receive an invitation to this important attraction. Besides, it is located in the highest tower of the city. The girl happily tells everything, and also brings the ticket to the guard, warning that the driver is also with them. When they went inside, Jiading began to describe what was happening here in colors. The coolest thing is a blind auction of precious stones. After ordering, you can find out the real price of the stone. Often it is twice the price of the lot, but you can also just lose everything. The staff bows to the guests. The drawing of stones is already in full swing. The fifth stone goes to number 3, the presenter joyfully announces. Beautiful waitresses walk everywhere with trays in their hands. Here, apparently, the entire elite of the city gathered. Jiading offers the guy to buy a stone for his wife. If she likes it, then the guy doesn't even mind doing it. Next lot, the hermit stone. Someone offered 50,000 for it, someone offered 100 at once. Many wanted to get it urgently, girlfriends also considered a pebble. Qing Li alone was standing, yawning and covering his mouth with his hand. Suddenly, his gaze in the pile of stones attracted one special one. A gentle purple glow emanated from him. Qing Li suddenly felt the energy of this stone resonating with his body. Meanwhile, 200,000 were already being offered for the hermit stone. The friend began to recall Qin Yin that she wanted such a stone, warning that Qin Li would not be fooled by a fake. But if he only tries to do this, then you need to immediately tell Jiading. She will immediately stand up for her friend. Qin Yin felt a chill, and then noticed that her husband was missing. At this time, he wanted to acquire the very stone with which he had resonated. It turns out that it cost only 100 yuan, since there is only rejected material on that counter, and they buy them just for fun. Qing Li began to rummage through his pockets, remembering that he had some small change. The guy hands the money to the girl, and then asks for help to break this stone. His friends find him, and Jiading shouts that no one doubted that he would go poking around the waist. The girl shouted furiously that everything was as usual. The pig would find dirt everywhere, just like he poured about the hospital. Qin Yin stood silently, considering her husband's actions. The girlfriend did not calm down, asking the guy that he wants to breed Qin Yin with this cheap thing. Meanwhile, the saleswoman was looking at the clean stone in shock, shouting that she now had an emerald in her hands. All the surprised looks were immediately transferred to her. The already rejected ones turned out to be an emerald, because it's like a pearl in a pile of slop. People didn't understand how he ended up among the slop, so also what luck that the guy got this particular pebble. Someone shouted that this was the dream of his whole life. Asked to disperse, everyone rushed to buy rejected stones. The girls tried to flatter the guy to buy an emerald, but he just stood there with a stony face. Someone offered 1 million, 2 or even 5. According to the most conservative estimates, the value of this emerald is exactly 5 million, said the Jasper King of Yongcheng City, known as Big Boss Tang. The famous jeweler of the city asked to give him this stone for 5 million. The guy rolled his eyes and referred to the fact that he bought it as a gift for his wife, so ask her. Qin Yin stood in shock, and Jiading was extremely inspired by such a miracle. Qin Yin looks at this stone sadly, and then says that this gentleman is a man who knows his business, so you can sell it to him. There is no equal to him in Yongcheng, so it is an honor for Qin Yin. The man exclaimed joyfully that he would immediately write a check in her name, and also thanked her for the flattering words. Someone asked how people managed to miss such a nugget. A famous jeweler decides to ask how this young man managed to discern such a value in this stone, because even he with his experience and a trained eye could not do it. The guy sighs, closes his eyes and says that outwardly it is the most ordinary stone, without any features. His wife indignantly asks that he chose him from many others, that he should tell Mr. Tan about his success. No one believed that Qing Li could pull it out at random. Someone referred to the sixth sense. The famous jeweler still stopped the questions about success, saying that you need to respect the secrets of the master, and he still has the stone. Now it turns out that the price for a lot at a blind auction has soared so high for the first time. Suddenly, this emerald has cracked in half and now the thunder is his price. Jiading couldn't believe her eyes, and the man frowned, then laughed, saying that he was not mistaken from the very beginning. After all, they, the Tans, know a lot about stones. Winking, he shakes Qing Li's hand and offers to go to him as a jeweler. The man asks not to answer immediately, to think about everything, and only then give an answer. The girl grabs her father by the arm and asks if he knew about it from the very beginning. He chuckled and shook his head convincingly. Both husband and wife were driving in the car. The girl asks what kind of circus happened at the auction. Qing Li again refers to reading books once. The girl throws back the check, which her husband brings to her and shouts that he has deceived her like this before. Then she asked an important question about why he had been deceiving her for so many years and kept silent. Qing Li thought about it. An old man with a long gray beard hands over a book and tells the glorious young man to study this book from cover to cover. And 10 years later he will not be equal among mortals. But these 10 years he will need to live in strict austerity in order to cultivate Kai energy inside himself. This will forever determine the fate of the guy. The elder would like to be there when his lucky star lights up. But it's time to say goodbye. Qing Li tells his wife that he did not deceive her, and was really mute. The girl interrupts the conversation and turns away out the window, because she feels that her husband does not want to tell her anything. However, he is waiting for an explanation why he married her. The guy asks if she has forgotten what happened between them and plunges into memories. A few years ago, in a street diner, some strange guy poured a bowl of soup on Qing Li and started laughing loudly, wondering if he liked it. Suddenly there is a cry of a girl who addressed these hooligans. She appealed to their conscience, because the guy she was protecting with her hand now was alone, and there were a lot of these brainless ones. Qin Yin just remembered everything and her eyes widened. King Li drives the car, smiles and says that when, after graduating from university, the girl proposed to Li to get married, he was over the moon with happiness, although he always knew that marriage was only a fiction. The girl shrank, and then asked why her husband did not hate her. He looked at him in surprise and asked how he could hate her at all, because the Chu family did not particularly offend him, and his wife even more so. Besides, in his heart, King Li had always considered her his wife. The girl blushed all over, not understanding why her silly King Li was telling all this now. After all these pleasant memories of me together, they blushed and drove all the way home. Then King Li remembered about the imminent opening of his clinic, so he reminded his wife about it and officially invited her. The girl folded her hands, wondering at her husband's words. She thought he was joking, and then decides to remind her that healing people is not so easy. To which her husband tells her that healing people is his whole life's work, so you shouldn't worry. Qin Yin turns away and asks to get it on his nose. If he messes up, then no one will go to prison for him. King Li just smiled as he continued to watch the road. Qin Yin blushed again, thinking that her husband was really so stupid, since he did not understand her worries for him. A bright sunny day greets us again, as well as the sounds of fireworks and the joyful cries of visitors. A new treatment center called Yin and Yang is being opened. Everyone wishes happiness and good luck to the new managers. In the room, Cheng Wen's mother-in-law noted the wonderful son-in-law of the Chu family, because she does not understand how he will have time to examine all the patients. Her husband was standing next to her, also convinced of the divorce of this event. He waved his fan contentedly, but the uncle praised his son-in-law, saying that you shouldn't worry about him so much, because he is full of new different talents. For example, a guy saved the mayor's family not so long ago. He presented him with a hospital, and everyone understands that it is difficult to resist such a gift. The man laughed, and a drooping Qin Yin sat next to him and read some old book. Cheng Wen went up to Li, examined him viciously and whispered that he had ascended by the grace of the mayor, so immediately lifted his nose high that he even dared to open the hospital, as if he was tired of living himself. King Li didn't pay attention to the guy standing next to him for a long time, and then turned slightly and said that he didn't really catch the connection between the hospital and was tired of living. Cheng Wen once again grinned and warned that now Li's land is in his department, so no one will make fools of him anymore. Immediately, a joyful mayor appeared with Lu Wang, who immediately began congratulating their once savior from the threshold. King Li greeted them with the same joy, but everyone else was, to put it mildly, in a shocked state. Last time the mayor raised a glass to King Li's health, and then he came to congratulate this hospital. Cheng Wen did not understand what could connect them, since they communicate so closely. The girl pays compliments to the healer, and he thanks her in return and asks her to go inside as soon as possible, so as not to stand on the threshold. Qin Yin sadly closes the book, saying that only recently he was singing like a nightingale in the car, and then he filled his mouth with water. There was a loud cry for help in the street. They asked me to save someone's son. Everyone turned at the noise and immediately rushed out into the street. King Li asked him to skip, because he is the very doctor who can help. The boy was calling his father. He was very ill. He was seriously ill. They demanded to take him to the hospital urgently. Uncle, seeing this, did not even know that such diseases exist. He was sure that this disease was unusual. Cheng Wen's mother-in-law and he himself began to whisper about the fact that Li had just opened the hospital, as well as well-being, and got stuck in his door. Cheng Wen was sure that this guy needed it. He wanted to see how he would get out of it. They were indeed shamelessly mocking him. The boy's father was crying, asking for help, and King Li calmly says that he can do it, so we need to take the boy to the clinic as soon as possible. The boy was put on a couch. A lot of people crowded around. King Li sat down on a chair next to him, took the patient's wrist and put 2 fingers on it. From Li, that blue energy went again, which made its way like a carrot to the boy's stomach. King Li said that the man's son was very intoxicated and asked what the boy could have eaten. The man thoughtfully clutched his head and said that he did not know. Usually his neighbor looks after him when, of course, she is free. Qin Ying's mother is outraged by the carelessness of this man, who leaves his own child at the discretion of a neighbor. The child's father was kneeling near the couch, crying and saying that his wife had died a long time ago, so he had to work for 2 to save up for the boy to study. Meanwhile, King Li saw that black energy had settled in the boy. He was on the verge of death, and the symptoms were very similar to poisoning. Someone from the crowd shouted that Li allegedly bought a diploma in the transition, so he should not have been allowed to open a clinic. From these words, the crowd immediately began to demand the provision of documents, because King Li may turn out to be an ordinary fraudster, and he cannot be trusted to treat people. People demanded to let them in immediately and take the boy to a normal clinic. Cheng Wen and his mother-in-law laughed a little at what was happening. Qin Yin was slightly embarrassed, straightening a strand of hair. The man immediately jumped up, furiously asking why Li hadn't told him anything. He won't let King Li hurt his son. The healer started shouting that his son is now in a very serious condition, so every second counts. The boy cleared his throat again, and Li demanded that everyone urgently disperse, opening the veil. The boy's father asked not to scare his father so much. Meanwhile, King Li concentrated. A blue light formed around him. 5 internal organs ensure the work of the whole body, and the 6th protects the internal energy channels. Everything that exists is hidden in wonderful meridians. They support and connect the entire universe. Canals nourish the spirit, as rivers nourish the seas, and seas nourish the oceans. King Li pointed his needles at the points, the sun and moon, the celestial spheres, the guiding star Shangxing, the Lord of the Sky Tei, Huagai, Venus, Dub. The boy immediately got up and freed his stomach from the bad filling. Seeing his son's return to life, the father was delighted and immediately ran up to hug him, asking for forgiveness for himself most negligent. The boy is also glad to see his father, however, he wants to eat very much, so that he is able to eat a whole elephant. The father hugs his child and agrees to all his requests without question. The crisis has been left behind. Now patients can go to the hospital without risking the boy's life and conduct the necessary research. King Li put his bottles in place, and the patient's father asked for forgiveness and thanked the savior of his son literally on his knees. Many were sure that King Li was a fraudster, and he arranged everything like this. No one would have thought that in reality the guy would turn out to be a quality specialist capable of saving even the most difficult cases. People looked at the young doctor with admiration, even somehow mentally trying to apologize for their distrusts. But around the corner again stood a disgruntled Ming Hao, who could not believe that Li was able to pull the boy out of the other world. It seems that he was given a chance to escape and live in peace, but apparently the guy decided to ignore him, starting to create trouble for everyone around. Now he thinks that the guy was poisoned for nothing, and the possibilities of King Li were glorified in the district. An old man with a long beard passes by, who shouted out that Li does not have any licenses. He calms Ming Hao by saying that he who has patience will find. A joyful guy was running on the street, talking on the phone with his grandmother that he had met a real amazing and most importantly responsible healer. It was already night. A very tired guy was leaving through the back door of the clinic. He wanted to close everything as soon as possible and head home. But a noise in the bushes caught his attention. A wounded girl in special sports clothes and with a dagger in her hands came out of there. Apparently, she was fighting with someone not so long ago and far away. Seeing her, King Li asked about who the girl wanted to visit, but she immediately ran into him with her weapon. The guy asked her to slow down because he's just a local doctor. But the girl never made it as she fell halfway to King Li. Looking at the exhausted body, the guy realized that he was stuck in the clinic all night. He carried the wounded stranger inside and laid her on the couch. The phone rang. Qin Yin picked up the phone. King Li said that he had another patient, so it's not worth waiting for him at home today, as he will spend the night in the clinic. The girl gets angry, saying that he may stay there forever, and then violently hangs up. The guy was carrying medicines while his wife was passing out. He realized that she would need to buy something next time so that she would not be angry, because their relationship had just begun to improve. And even though their marriage was fictitious, then for his part he really loves this beautiful, and kind girl who so accidentally met on the way in his meager past life. The guy took everything he needed and began to treat other people's terrible wounds. He removed the jewelry from his neck, and it turned out to be an army badge that announced the 19th Special Forces Unit. Because of this information, the guy did not understand how this wounded girl could have ended up here, even in the middle of the night. In the military, someone specializes only in stealing intelligence, someone in hacking military equipment, and there is someone who secretly influences public opinion. But they, Squad 19, are one of a kind. Their group consists of 4 people, 3 guys and 1 girl. They are standing on the roof of the building and are going to go down. Suddenly, someone's voice informs them that Squad 19 has now been released from service. The girl's eyes opened wide. She didn't understand why, and then the memories were interrupted. This unknown girl woke up in a hospital bed, was extremely glad to be alive. King Li discovered that the girl had finally come to her senses. She looks at him uncomprehendingly, and then guesses that this man saved her. But if only a couple more minutes, then everything would be over. He would not be able to help her then. The guy poured some pink powder. The girl first assumed a sitting position, then, shaking her whole body, got up from the couch and headed for the exit. King Li decides to ask where the girl is going. She, in turn, understands that she has absolutely nowhere to go, because she has neither a stake nor a yard. She can barely stand on her feet, slightly holding onto the edge of the door. King Li goes to the window and says that he was just looking for an assistant, so he is interested in how a stranger looks at it. She was extremely surprised. The guy abruptly opened the windows, where it had been a clear sunny day outside for a long time. He was more friendly than ever before and sincerely wanted to help the stranger, because he understood that she had nowhere else to go, since she had devoted her whole life to this secret 19th squad. And the main bosses were able to tell them about their dissolution so easily, without worrying about where these people should go next. By the way, this is not the best solution, because they used to perform tasks and know a lot of things. The girl, after coming to herself, is still not thinking clearly, so she decides to ask again about the seriousness of the proposal of this unknown savior. King Li smiles easily and looks outside. He guarantees a salary every month, not millions, of course, but there will be enough for life. The stranger did not understand why she was saved and why they are now offering her a job, so she asks all this. The girl realizes that now her fate completely belongs to King Li. If a girl can be useful to this healer, then she is ready to go through fire, water, and copper pipes. King Li now demands to return to her room and fully recover, and at this time a loud shout rushes outside. A girl bursts into the room, asking him to go with her as soon as possible, since he has to see something. It was Tang Jiading. The guy asked why this girl came to him, and even so early, she accidentally didn't hit her head anywhere. To this, the girl said that he was beaten down himself, and she came to call him on behalf of the Tang family to take part in the Big Jasper Games. The girl was holding out 2 tickets, and then grabbed the guy by the tie and dragged him along. He was surprised, but there was no point in resisting. After a while, they found themselves at the main auction of precious stones blindly. There were really a lot of important people there. King Li had already changed into a business suit, and Jiading, seeing her father, immediately ran to him. When the famous jeweler saw the guy, he was extremely welcoming, as he no longer hoped that he would come. The guy was embarrassed, not expecting that Mr. Tang himself would be waiting for him. The jeweler laughed a little, and then offered to send a courtesy, and offered the role of a columnist at the auction. Hoping that this would not greatly disturb the guy's plans, King Li decides to rephrase the request of the gentleman, asking that he needs his advice at this auction. The famous jeweler smiles and agrees with this interpretation, because he himself saw perfectly well what this young man is capable of, so the advice will not be superfluous. This time the auction is divided into 2 stages, the auction itself and the sculpture. The winner gets everything, namely the most expensive gambling champion stone. This is number 12, the Green Dragon. Tang represents 3 of King Li's guys, Lao Hu, Wang Kao, and Zhao Lin. These 3 will become members of Li's team. Everyone was personally selected by a jeweler specifically for this occasion. Therefore, he wishes neither fluff nor feather to the Magnificent Four. Jiading also feels that today her father drooled a pretty sum to get into this auction, so if these 4 enter at least the top 3, then he will make them all rich from head to toe. The famous jeweler laughs again and says that if King Li helps them take the first place, he will immediately write off 10% of his jewelry empire to him. From this, the guy was only embarrassed and promised to do everything in his power. People have already gathered in the main hall. The members of Li's team approached him and began to laugh a little about whether it was possible for the kid to choose stones on his own without adults. King Li smiles slightly and says that although he is young, he is lucky in this business. An elderly participant hands the golden guy King Li and says that although Mr. King is in high spirits, they have all invested a lot of money to be here, and they are all young just to play Biryoki. The guy takes the card in his hands with doubt and asks how many millions they trust him. The participants start laughing, asking if he ever held such money in his hands. They decided that he was enough for 1,000, otherwise they can see that his hands are raking. Leaving, the team members of the team say that King Li has no chance, but he does not answer them anything more and looks at his card. The head, as well as the gaze, are rushing in search of jewelry among simple stones. Suddenly, one stone suddenly glowed with a blue light, which attracted King Li's attention. King Li couldn't believe his eyes as he looked at this stone. He was greeted by the girl who was selling these stones, asking what the buyer was doing to purchase. Meanwhile, other team members were passing nearby with a huge stone, saying that now victory is in their pocket. They are sure that now they will get their 5 million for the stone. From these conversations, the guy was a little scared, but tried to drive the depressing thoughts out of his head. While King Li was hanging on the conversation of other men, a girl called out to him, asking if the guy would buy anything. He returns again to the saleswoman and hands her a gold card, saying that there should be about 50,000 on it, so there should be enough to buy the stone. The girl picks up the card and thanks the buyer. Qing Li suddenly hears someone call out to him. The members of his team boast that they have acquired a pretty good stone, and they can't wait to find out what kind of place he claims. One of the men asks whether to be careful, or else he will buy an ordinary naked. The old man bends down and says that in his place he would have quickly gone home from shame, because Tan Dai will definitely not be happy with such a choice. Qing Li decides to answer them, asking what the problem is because he bought the stone and what place it will take. It's not their concern for sure. Moreover, Mr. Tang himself invited him here, and the guy did not ask for it. Suddenly, the famous jeweler himself approaches, asking the participants if they have made their choice. The man whispers to him that this time they bought an unambiguously worthy and the best stone. He guarantees that they will take at least the third place. Mr. Tang twists his blonde mustache, looks at the stones and rejoices that he will finally take his rightful place. The jeweler appraisingly looked at the stone and at first glance it seemed to him really not bad, even very worthy. Someone from the crowd recognized old man Tang. A short man came out with a girl and confidently said that at that time the winner stone was taken from under Tan's nose, and now he had the courage and audacity to come back here, or he just didn't have enough humiliation. That laughing man was the money bag Tyne Song. The famous jeweler got angry, saying that it was definitely not his concern. This Tyne appraisingly examined Qing Li and laughed at him, saying that Tang had sunk so low that he already took the first people he met into the team from the street. Tyne decides to clarify that there is no one else normal left, and after that, out of old friendship, he advises to get out of the way, because he will keep at least a grain of self-respect. Tanom is not welcome anywhere else in Wuhan, so he should pack his things and get out of here. The old man asks the jeweler not to be angry, leaving this matter on him, and offers to say that this boy was imposed on them. After a while, all the ladies and gentlemen came on stage, and of course, the team members were asked for a little attention. The auction competition has been officially declared open. The host for this evening was called Fragile Sin. She asked if anyone guessed about the future winners and if everyone had made their bets, because there were only a few minutes left. A jeweler decides to contact Qing Li, asking where his stone is. The guy shows the stone in a small box, and the rest of the participants start laughing loudly both from the price and from the appearance. Tan was very worried, because he saw everything with his own eyes then, and now, apparently, the guy is just too young. Meanwhile, the competition began, and already a green glass insert fell out on the first stone. Everyone immediately started shouting their bets. Someone offered 35 million, someone 38.5, and someone all 42.5 million. A member of the jeweler's team was already very surprised by such high stakes at the very beginning of the game. Today was a really hot auction. The leaders remained 63 million, 52 and 42 million. The hereditary jewelry house of Tans became the final participants of today's competition. Everyone began to meet the team and their stones. The biggest stones were taken out first. The man hoped very much that when cutting there was a green one. Qing Li knew that several millions had been spent on this, and the stone would turn out to be a dummy, so it was easier to burn that money. The guy met the members of his own team with an indifferent look, but the jeweler sitting next to him was visibly worried. A moment after the cut, everyone saw that the stone turned out to be absolutely not green, but an ordinary dummy. The guys could not believe what had happened, because they bought this stone for as much as 5 million, and there was an ordinary dummy in place. Loud laughter is heard in the hall, and Tan is blue from the impending failure. Someone shouted that for him. Without a doubt, today is just a unique day. Sin sadly announces that no one could have thought that the heroes would buy such an expensive stone, and it would turn out to be an ordinary dummy. Mr. Tang has disappointed everyone very much. The jeweler thinks that it's already over and Morley just gives up. But Xing notices that Qing Li is coming on stage, which means that the team has another stone. Tan asks him not to do this, so as not to embarrass himself even more, but the guy is firm in his intention. Qing Li saws his pebble and it turns out to be perfectly green imperial color. Everyone is quite surprised, because it looks unremarkable, but inside it is so beautiful. They shouldn't have written Tan off, because right now he will show everyone what it's like to lose when the victory is snatched right out from under your nose. The old man from Tan's team was angry, because the kid barely scraped 20,000, and then he was lucky, and he got caught perfectly green. The jeweler thought about it, because if he had immediately and fully invested in Qing Li, He would have been a champion for a long time with the help of King Li's wonderful abilities. To the surprise of everyone, the guy continued to saw the gem, which the presenter immediately notices, and Tan runs to the stage and asks to stop. Unexpectedly for everyone, the legendary Jasper statuette turns out to be inside this stone. Sin opened her mouth, and her eyes were 5 kopecks each, as in principle all the participants in this contest, because a bloodstone was suddenly discovered inside the nugget. In the past, the price for it reached from 1 billion. All the people immediately rushed to the stage, wanting to see and quickly acquire the find. King Li takes out the statuette and tells the jeweler that he chooses it.